Hello, boxing world, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Bout Hour, the channel dedicated to bringing you fantasy matchups on a regular basis. If there's a particular matchup that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comment section, and I promise to honor your request. Don't forget to subscribe and to hit the bell notification. I thank all my subscribers thus far for your support and participation in the channel. You inspire me to keep doing what I'm doing. So, I have another request from you, and this is another one from Morgan M. I thank you for your request and for participating in the channel. The fight that Morgan mentioned is a good one at 168, which is super middleweight, of course. One that I've thought about myself, but just never got around to covering, and that is Roy Jones Jr. versus Gerald McClellan. Gerald the G-Man McClellan, excuse me. This is an exciting fight. An exciting matchup, an interesting stylistic matchup. So let's jump into it. Of course, Gerald McClellan's notable fights, or just a couple of his notable fights, was against Julian Jackson and Nigel Benn. So he's been in there with the best of his era. And back then, you didn't have to worry about the best fighting the best or the best not fighting the best. I mean, it was just a given that all the top fighters would face one another at some point. So Gerald McClellan is a high action fighter, a pressure fighter, and an attacking fighter. I mean, he's fighting from the opening bell until the final bell. He's just coming for you. He doesn't look to really fill you out. He's looking to take you out. I have to say that again. He's not looking to fill you out, but he's looking to take you out. So he's definitely going to bring the pain, like we said back then. And so, yes, very talented fighter, high action fighter, high impact fighter. As far as Roy Jones Jr., I mean, the guy really needs no introduction. I really don't need to tell you how great of a fighter he was, but I will anyway. And what I loved about Roy Jones Jr. is that he broke all the rules of orthodoxy, and that made him great. I mean, if there ever was an unorthodox fighter, it was Roy Jones Jr. No one could drop their hands like Roy Jones and get away with it. Nobody could throw lead rights with their left hand at the sides and get away with it quite like Roy Jones Jr. His footwork and the best reflexes in the history of boxing, as far as I'm concerned. So Roy Jones Jr. was it. So this clash would have been beautiful. It really would have. I mean, the fans would have been the real winners in this fight. And so the pressure of Gerald McClellan versus the speed and the reflexes, and I forgot to mention Roy Jones Jr. counterpunching abilities. I mean, some of the best. I can't say it enough. Some of the best. So how would this stylistic matchup play out? Let me think. How would it play out? Well, I will say that Roy Jones Jr. has the speed advantage. And while I like Gerald McClellan, while I like the pressure he applied onto his opponents, and while I like his intensity and his action, sometimes he tended to throw his punches wide and looping. I mean, and by doing that, you're inviting those counter left hooks from Roy Jones Jr. You're inviting those counter straight rights, those counter uppercuts. So the worst thing to do against Roy Jones Jr. was to throw wide looping shots. Now, one of Roy Jones Jr.'s weaknesses is that sometimes he would lay on the ropes. He would do the Ali rope-a-dope. I mean, which is cool, but he would take unnecessary punishment and body shots against them ropes. I don't know how much of a toll that it actually took. If it took a toll, I couldn't tell because he would fight through it, but that would be the only thing I would be concerned about in this fight. But to be quite honest with you, I could see Roy Jones Jr. having a counter-punching field day against Gerald McClellan. So I don't know how much respect he would get from Gerald McClellan. I don't know how much Roy Jones Jr.'s power would affect Gerald McClellan. But sometimes the worst thing is hitting somebody with everything that you have, and then they're not going anywhere. They're in your face, which would be the case, I believe, in this fight. Although both guys are talented, Roy Jones Jr. is just a little more talented, to tell you the truth, a little more skilled, a little more refined. So Gerald McClellan, a lot of times, just went for the kill in there. He just went for the kill, which would play right into Roy Jones's hands, because Roy Jones Jr. was great at backing up, great at fighting off the back foot, countering, waiting for his opportunities, and just relying on his reflexes. And with those great reflexes, I mean, I would have relied on my reflexes too. So honestly, I could see Roy Jones giving Gerald McClellan more problems than Gerald McClellan would give Roy Jones Jr. I'm not really seeing a knockout in this fight. If there was a knockout, it would come from Roy Jones. I do think that he would win a comfortable decision. Just based on the attributes that I mentioned, the reflexes, the speed, the counter punching. And I've got to mention just being able to throw punches from all angles, uppercuts, hooks, straight rights, a quick flickering jab. I mean, back then, Roy Jones Jr. just had it all. It seemed invincible back then. I mean, I could have never, foresaw the future where someone like Antonio Tarver would knock Roy out. And it happens. It happens as you age, as you get older, as you start slowing down. I get that. But at the time, I never saw Roy Jones Jr. losing to anyone. I never saw him losing to anyone. So there were a lot of talented fighters around the Roy Jones era. But Roy Jones was just on another level. He was just a step up from everybody else. So much respect to Gerald G-Man McClellan. I know he would bring it. I know that this would be a high action affair. I know that Gerald McClellan would be explosive. He would get Roy against those ropes. He would get to that body. I don't see him splitting the guard of Roy Jones Jr. I don't see him landing a lot of headshots. Gerald could make this physical. He could make this extremely physical. Land punches on the guard, and get the crowd going, all that good stuff. But I just see all the advantages belonging to Roy Jones Jr. So I'm going to go with Roy by a comfortable majority decision. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next video. What's up, boxing world? I am back for another edition of Fantasy Bout Hour, the channel dedicated to bringing you fantasy matchups on a regular basis. If there's a particular matchup that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comment section, and I promise that I will honor your request. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. The fight that I'll be bringing to you in this video comes by way of request, and it is coming from Terrell C. I thank you for another great matchup, and I thank you, Terrell, for participating in the channel. The fight that Terrell mentioned is one that I've often thought about, and I go back and forth on this one, to tell you the truth, because there's so many factors involved, and that is Roy Jones Jr. versus Chris Burke. This is one that I wish that Roy would have taken while he was a heavyweight, before he went back down in weight to fight Antonio Tarver. I mean, it would have been a great stylistic matchup. Both fighters are extremely unorthodox. You have the southpaw, and Chris Byrd. And this would have been a high-speed chess match. That would have been great. This just would have been a great fight at heavyweight. Both of them, were small heavyweights. So I don't see the size of Byrd being being a big factor in the fight. But once again, it's a high-speed chess match. Let's talk about Roy Jones for a second. Even when Roy Jones, fought that one fight at heavyweight against John Ruiz, I mean, he looked unstoppable in that fight. As a matter of fact, I was kind of mad because I'm like, well, I was hopeful that someone would finally give Roy Jones a challenge. I mean, it's not, you can't blame him for being so good. So I was hoping at heavyweight that he would finally face a challenge. And he beat John Ruiz like he beat everyone else. And so I'm kind of like, is there anyone who can compete with this guy? Is there anyone who can beat this guy? I mean, even at heavyweight, I mean, he can't get any competition. In hindsight, I wish Roy would have stayed at heavyweight, fought a couple more times at heavyweight, with Byrd being one of those matchups, and then just retired. I mean, that would have been better. But a fighter always fights, and he fought on like most legends. Byrd wouldn't have been the target that Roy is used to having. I mean, he would have been more elusive than Roy would have been used to. So Roy would have to work to get to the target. He definitely would. Both fighters fight beautifully off the back foot. Byrd would give Roy some challenges stylistically. Just speaking stylistically, Byrd would give Roy some challenges. Vice versa, and vice versa. The size advantage, I'll take back what I said about size advantage. I mean, Byrd could use his size advantage, and it may be a factor. If Byrd is smart, it may be a factor. He could bully Roy. He could get Roy against those ropes, go to the body. I don't know how much Byrd's power would be a factor, because Byrd wasn't known for his power, especially at heavyweight. He was known for his slickness. He was known for his elusiveness, his footwork, upper body movement. And both of the guys are showmen. They both like to showboat. So once again, I can't say it enough. This would have been a great matchup. And they should have did it. No exhibitions, please. No exhibitions. But they should have did it. So you got the slickness of Roy. You got the slickness of Byrd. Both guys are unorthodox. Both guys have great footwork, upper body movement, head movement. They both have speed. So, wow. It's really a pick 'em fight. It really is. But I have to go with Byrd on this one, because of the size. And I realize I just contradicted what I said at the beginning of the video, but the more I got to talking, the more I realized that the size may play a factor in this fight. The size may play a factor. So not sure about a knockout. But once Roy feels that size advantage, coming from Byrd and coming from a slick fighter like himself, from the southpaw stance, I think that he could possibly become gun shy, not throw as many punches, not be as confident, because Byrd isn't John Ruiz. I mean, John Ruiz was tailor-made for Roy. Just coming forward and just trying to apply pressure in a straight line, basically. But that won't be Chris Burke. I mean, Chris Burke is going to show you a few different looks. Both fighters are good. Respect to both fighters. But based on the stylistic factors and the stylistic realities, I'm going to go with Chris Burke by decision. Good fight, though. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next video.